Creating users and groups is typically one of the first steps to building up a Spider Impact environment. I typically start with groups. To add a group, I'll select Administration in the bottom left. Then select Groups and Permissions. I can see all the groups that have been added to my environment. Although not required, I've decided to create one group for each of the group types: Power Users, Update Users, Interactive Users, and View Only. I'll select the Power Users group and see that the group type, not surprisingly, has been set to Power Users. Because that was set, when I click on Advanced, I'll see the maximum list of permissions that are allowed. For Power Users, there are a large number of permissions that can either all be selected, all be unselected, or just a percentage allowed. If this was a group that contained all admin users, these permissions would be what I would recommend, with all permissions checked. However, if this was a group that contained users that were not administrators, I would need to be a bit more selective. The first selection I'd likely remove is the super admin rights in the bottom. And I would deselect the top checkbox there. I would also take the time to think through each of these other options more carefully. One that I'd like to highlight is the View All Organizations permission. If this permission is granted, I'll have access to all the organizations in the environment. If it is not granted, I need to be granted access to each organization manually. And I'll provide an example of that in a minute. For now, I'll restore all the permissions for this group by selecting Cancel and move on to Organization. Notice that the Selected Organizations section is blank. Even though it's blank, I have access to all the orgs in my environment. And I'll just demonstrate that quickly by selecting another tab and selecting the drop down arrow here and seeing that I have access to Mobile World and Demo. Going back to the other tab, I'll just select Cancel. I'll move on to the Update Users group and see that the group type was set to Update Users. Because that was set, when I click on Advanced, I'll see the maximum list of permissions allowed for this group is less than half of those for Power Users. Notice that for this group, the View All Organization permission was unchecked. If I cancel and select Organization, I'll see that I needed to apply the orgs that I wanted this group to see, in this case Mobile World and Demo. I'll select Cancel and move on to the Interactive Users group. I see that the group type was set to Interactive Users, and because that was set, when I click on Advanced, I'll see the maximum list of permissions allowed for this group is only a handful. Notice as well that the View All Organizations permission was checked because it contains members of our executive team who have access to all orgs. I'll select Cancel and move on to the View Only group. I see that the group type was set to View Only. Because that was set, when I click on Advanced, I'll see the maximum list of permissions allowed for this group is only 2. Notice as well that the View All Organizations permission is unchecked. I'll select Cancel and select Organization and see that I needed to apply the orgs that I wanted this group to see. In this case, just the root level of Mobile World. If I wanted to add cascading permissions, I would need to check the box next to the 20, which is the total number of orgs within Mobile World. If I wanted to add access to just a specific department, I would need to expand Mobile World on the left. I would select a department like Financial, and then I would click Add. I would then select Done and Save, but in this case I'll just select Cancel. The next thing I'd like to show is how to add a group. To do that, I need to click the plus icon up in the top middle here. I need to enter a group name. I'll just type training. We need to select a group type, maybe interactive users. I would select advanced to set the appropriate permissions. And then I would select organizations to set the appropriate orgs that I would like that group to see. I could then select add members to this group by clicking in the box, and I would select a person, maybe somebody like D. To save the group, I would click save in the bottom right, but in this case I'll just select cancel. I can also copy a group. To copy a group, I would click on the desired group, like view only, and then select copy at the bottom. I then have the ability to rename the new group and select those things I want to include with the copy. I'll choose to include group members, group admins, and organization permissions. I'll make note of the fact that advanced permissions will be copied automatically. I'll then select copy and edit. The original group members and admins have carried over since I just chose to include them. If I select organization, I'll note that Mobile World has carried over since I chose to copy org permissions. If I select cancel and then click on advanced, the one thing that carries over automatically, as per the note earlier, are the permissions shown here. However, I do have the ability to manually change them. I would then select done, but in this case I'll just select cancel. To delete a group, I need to click on the desired group, maybe view only copy, select delete, and then confirm the deletion. One more item I'd like to show with groups is the ability to edit them by organization. Up at the top, I'll select by organization. I can select any element of the org hierarchy like Mobile World. In the top right, I can see which groups were granted direct permissions to it. In this case, update users and view only. Notice that the power users and interactive users groups are not listed. However, if I select can view all organizations, I'll see those two groups. Even though I didn't manually take the time to grant those groups access to the org, they automatically have access to it due to the view all organizations permission. Lastly, for cascading permission, there are no groups shown, meaning that no permissions cascade down from a higher level. However, if I select the financial org, I'll see one group with cascading permissions, meaning that permissions were granted at a parent level, like Mobile World, and cascaded down to this level. If I click on it, I'll see that once again the power user and interactive users groups are not listed, but they have access to the org due to the can view all organizations permission. The last item to note is that group permissions are also editable from this option. If I select Mobile World, in the top right, I can change whether or not permissions cascade, I can edit the group, and last but not least, I could click delete to remove access to, in this case, the view only group from this particular org. However, I'll just select cancel. With that, I'll move on to users by selecting users under users and groups. From here, I see all the users that have been added to my environment: D, Don, Frank, and Tom. If I click on a user like Frank, I can see which groups that person has been assigned to and whether or not they are the admin of any groups. To add a user, I have two options. To add them manually, I need to click the plus or the add icon. I then need to enter a username, email address, first and last name, a password, and then confirm the password. If I want to force the user to change their password the first time that they log in, I can leave this box checked. I can also add them to groups at this time, but for now I'll move on to importing users. I'll select the import icon in the top middle and get presented with a list of instructions that I should follow very carefully, especially if I'm including existing users. To show how this works, I'll select Download Example. I'll open the user's example CSV file in Excel. I'll increase the zoom a bit and expand all columns here. To simplify this, I'll delete the last two rows and then make note of the fact that the username, first name, last name, email, and password columns are all required. I'll edit this for the person I want to add. For the sake of time, I'll just update the username. I'll make that Jason M. I'll change the first name to Jason, and the last name, I'll just make that initial M. I'll leave the email address and passwords as is. Moving on, the middle name column is not required, so I'll leave that blank. The group key column is also not required, but allows me to import a user to an existing group. For example, if I go to my second tab in Spider Impact, select Administration, and select Groups and Permissions, and select Power Users. In the top right, I can see the ID for the group. In this case, 2006. I'll go back to Excel, and if I wanted to import Jason automatically to the Power Users group, I would type 2006 for the group key. Moving on to the title column, it is also not required. Furthermore, it should only be used if titles have been configured in the system. If I go back to my second tab in Spider Impact, select Application Administration and scroll to the bottom, I'll see under user titles, the valid entries in my system are Mr. and Ms. If I go back to Excel, I would have to type in one of those two values exactly. In this case, Mr. for Jason. I also have the option to just leave the cell blank, and I'll do that by clearing out the entry. With that, I'll select Save. I'll go back to Spider Impact, my first tab, and from here I'll select Browse. I'll select the file that I was just working with and select Open. I'll confirm that the import looks okay and then select Import. I'll confirm the import finished successfully and select Done. If I select Jason, I'll see all of his credentials have carried over from the import, including the Power Users group. Note that if I included an existing user like Tom in the import and set a password, he would be required to log in with that password and be asked to change it. If I left the password blank, he would be able to keep his existing one and not be prompted to change it. Note also that as my list of users grow beyond a certain limit, this list shown here will disappear and be replaced with a display that shows how many users are in the system and advising me to search or filter to find a user. In the Find box, I could just type a user's name like Frank and get filtered down to just the list of users with that name. To get more granular, I could select the filter icon and search by a portion of the name, like last name. However, in this case, I'll just restore the full list of users by clearing the box. The next thing I'd like to show is the ability of an administrator to log in as another user to troubleshoot permissions, set up bookmarks, alerts, etc. for them. To be able to do that, a user requires the administer application permission. To show where that is, I'll go to Groups, select Power Users, and then click on Advanced. If I scroll down, in the bottom right under Super Administration is the Administer Application Permission. I'll now select Cancel. Since Frank and Jason are part of that group, they both have the Login As option available to them. Thankfully, I'm already logged in as Frank, so I'll go back to Users and I'll select Jason. In the top right, I'll select the Login As option. And note that I get prompted with a warning that everything I do will be recorded as myself. But I'll be editing things like bookmarks and alerts for Jason. Since I'm okay with that, I'll select Login. At the top, notice a clear warning that I'm now logged in as Jason. I see this user has no alerts and no responsibilities since I just added him to the system during the import. I could set bookmarks and alerts for him, but I'll leave that alone. I'll select Scorecards, click on the demo org, and choose Select. I'll expand Examples and log in as another user. I'll select Training Revenue and select Edit. I'll now illustrate the fact that all changes I make logged in as Jason still get tied to Frank. I'll change the data type from currency to number. Select Save and select Done. If I then select History in the top right and select All Events, notice how the data type change shows as Frank making the change instead of Jason. With that looking as expected, I'll select Close and then select Log Out as Jason in the top right.